Welcome to Fantasy View, where I review some of the latest fantasy novels that have caught my eye. I'll tell you what to read and what to skip, and I'll encourage you to check out my own work, available now on Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, and the iBookstore. Recently I did something I've never done before. I read a visual novel. They're different from graphic novels and motion comics in that they're developed from the ground up like video games, and they're usually found in online video game stores. The House in Fata Morgana is developed by Novatical and is written by Keika Hanada with illustrations by Moyotaro. As I've come to learn, most visual novels are made in Japan and usually have an anime art style, but House in Fata Morgana is different in that it adopts a more realistic and shaded art style that's more appropriate to its story. I found this while browsing through the PlayStation Online store, and I was drawn to its dark, gothic atmosphere, its description promising a story of tragedy and sadness. After viewing one review of the book on YouTube, I decided to go for it. And I was not disappointed. This book, hell, I might as well just call it a book, is fantastic. Awfully slow at first, but after a while it got so damn good I knew I just had to finish it. It has memorable characters, beautiful artwork, and easy to follow text. So what's it about? The story centers on a mansion that's said to be cursed by a witch. It draws people in without their knowing it to inflict a sad fate upon them. It begins with you, the reader, sitting in a chair by a fireplace. A woman called the Maid approaches and asks if you know who you are. You don't, so she offers you to learn of the mansion's history so you can figure out your identity. She leads you to a door, and upon crossing it, you are suddenly the observer of a story that took place hundreds of years ago, when the mansion was inhabited by the Rhodes family. The master of the house is usually away, so two young siblings, Mel and Nellie, are essentially the masters most of the time. They are very close, with Mel being the guarded, uptight one, and Nellie being the bratty, free-spirited one. One day, a young girl happens upon the mansion and is given a job as a maid. She is simply called the white-haired girl, for her hair and skin are snow white and her eyes are ruby red. She's obviously an albino, even though albino humans actually have light blue eyes, not red ones. Mel becomes entranced by her beauty and quiet grace, and he begins to court her, very awkwardly. His sister tries to get in the way of this courtship, and along the way, she discovers a dark family secret. This is the setup for the first chapter, and I'm afraid to say, it can be pretty dull at times. The dramatic tension is often at a minimum, and I was worried the entire book would be like this. But trust me, everything happens for a reason, and the payoff at the end is worth it. There's a lesson to be had in this chapter, and even my cynical old self was pretty moved by it. The story of the siblings was told by the maid, remember her, who said she had lived through this time, even though it was hundreds of years ago. After chapter 1, the maid takes you to another door, where you witness another story that takes place many years later, when the mansion is empty and dilapidated. The maid is in this time period too, for she is never able to leave the mansion, no matter what condition it's in. One day she happens upon a beast in the backyard, and she wonders if she could make this beast her new master. It's a very weird setup, just totally out of left field. So I just had to keep on reading to find out just what the hell's going to happen. The beast is depicted as a shadowy figure with eyes and a mouth, and it might be just one of the creepiest damn things you'll ever see. It can't speak at first, but after many lessons from the maid, it can speak the local language fluently. A merchant comes across the mansion, seeking shelter and directions, only to end up being brutally murdered by the beast. The beast comes to realize that it likes murdering people, so it invites more to come inside to meet the wrong end of a blade. Over time, a woman named Pauline arrives in search of her missing boyfriend, a traveling merchant whose ship was wrecked. He is presumed dead, but Pauline holds on to hope that he's still alive. Unfortunately, it seems more likely that her boyfriend was just another victim of the wicked beast of the mansion, who's been terrorizing a nearby village. Obviously, this chapter is more interesting than the last, what with the murder and mayhem. Unfortunately, it too can be pretty dull at times, especially given its tendency to have long-winded flashbacks. That ending, though, wow. Just wow. Chapter 3 has the mansion sitting in the new world. Yes, really. This confused the hell out of me at first, till I learned the mansion has the ability to teleport across space when it needs to, so now it's in America during the Industrial Revolution. The new master is a man named Jacopo, an investor who's putting his money on the Transcontinental Railroad. He has a beautiful wife whom he treats so poorly, she may as well be part of the furniture. A year ago, when they were newlyweds, Jacopo was actually quite fond of her, but nowadays he emotionally abuses her and acts like he'd rather not have her around. Still, she holds on to hope that his old fondness will resurface so they can be happy again. But once Jacopo's ties to the Mafia come into focus, any chance of his heart softening is diminished. Chapter 4 takes us back to the Middle Ages, where a woman who's been labeled a witch seeks refuge in the mansion. There she meets its lone occupant, a man named Mitchell, who claims he's been ostracized due to a curse he's had since birth. Beyond this, I dare not say any more, for there is simply one plot twist after another. And after one plot twist, I was like, holy shit, how could there possibly be a happy ending after this? It was that shocking. The house in Fata Morgana is just one of those things that's best to go in as blind as you can. Just like the hit video game Undertale, whose fans will tell you is the best thing ever, yet they can never fully explain why. You just have to check it out on your own. Ultimately, I say this book is a gothic drama with fantasy and horror elements. There's very little action, but what action there is meant for shock value. And even though the story is generally dark in tone, there is plenty of humor peppered throughout to lessen the bleakness. As I said, the text is easy to read and follow, but I noticed that much of the dialogue is not accurate for the various time periods throughout the story. The English translator went for trendy terms from our modern era, which helps make the book accessible to modern readers, but I found it distracting. This, however, is not enough to make the book avoid my high recommendation. On Steam, The House in Fata Morgana costs $25, which is awfully steep considering that many of the visual novels I've seen cost around $12. On PlayStation 4, however, it costs $40. That's because this is a special edition that includes not one, but 3 books, and a collection of short stories. The second book, A Requiem for Innocence, is a prequel to the main story, and it's very spoiler-heavy, which is why access to it is locked away right at the start. The third book, Reincarnation, is a spiritual sequel that comes across as a piece of fan fiction, but it is done by the same author, so you know it's intelligent and thought-provoking. On its own, this sequel isn't very much, but I think its main purpose is to bring a sense of closure for all the characters. After enduring so much trauma in that first book, closure is definitely something that any reader would want. I won't lie, even if you try to speed read The House in Fata Morgana, you'll be in for a long haul. I estimate my entire reading time was around 40 hours. And I'm glad I stuck around, because after its slow start, this book was so engrossing and heart-wrenching. It's a very adult story, as evidenced by its M for Mature rating, for blood, violence, sex, cussing. You know, the stuff that makes life worth living. But seriously though, this story can get very dark, especially in the second half. So even though it has its lighter moments, it's not for the squeamish. And did I mention the music? I tell you, the developer did not skimp out on the music, for it's filled with beautiful songs that match the story's often grim mood. And many songs have vocals in Latin, you know, for that extra dosage of old world culture. I only wish it wasn't so repetitive, but that's what the mute button is for. I'm Jason Hubbard. Thanks for listening to Fantasy View, and please keep reading.